Hello everyone, welcome to another 3D Total interview. Today we have the amazing, wonderful and talented Djamila Knopf. Jamila is an independent artist and illustrator based in Germany. Her work can be defined as a perfect blend between fantasy and reality, creating a strong sense of emotion that pulls you into the world and story of her characters. Jamila is also a schoolism instructor where she shares her knowledge on how to create similar story-driven illustrations. Today, we'll be discussing with Jamila on her second book with 3D Total. So, with all that out of the way, let's get into the interview.
Hi.
I am such a huge fan of your work. I've been following your art since what now? I don't even remember, like 2016? I don't know. Like, I've been following your art for so long, and I am such a huge fan of your illustrations. I took your schoolism class. I backed your art book. Huge fan. Just so you know. But enough of my fangirling. Do you want to take some time to, tell us a bit about yourself? Because I know a lot. I've listened to a lot of your interviews. I know. But just for those who are not maybe familiar with your work, can you tell us a bit about your artistic journey? Tell us about how you became the artist that you are right now.
Yeah, of course. My name is Jamila. I live in Leipzig, Germany. I'm an independent artist. That means I just do my own thing, paint illustrations, sell prints of them. I teach on schoolism, like you said. I do all kinds of things. I do conventions, and getting here in terms of my artistic journey has been not very straightforward. When I was a kid, I always wanted to become an artist, but I never thought that I could. And I opted to become a teacher after I finished school. So I enrolled in a university program to become a teacher for art and English at school. But then while I was in university, I learned that people were actually working as artists, doing like all kinds of fantasy illustrations. I discovered that, you could work for Magic the Gathering and these kinds of companies and make a living that way. So that's when I decided that I wanted to give it a try. So I bought all kinds of books. I looked at YouTube videos. I just soaked up all the information I could find on like how to become a better artist. So I really studied hard and tried everything I could to develop the skills I needed to do it. And then for a couple of years, I did some commissioned work, did some freelance, did the kinds of jobs I wanted or I thought I wanted, but then I discovered that I'd rather do my own thing and not work for other people. And gradually started selling my own work, making prints of it, and developing that way. And it worked out, and I'm still doing that. It's been a couple of years, and I'm really happy about that.
Like I said, I've been following your art for so long, and I'm so glad you decided to focus on your own stuff because I love your illustrations. I remember the first time I saw one of your artworks, I was blown away. I think when you were posting your environment studies, and I was like, this is a study? What? No. I was blown away. So I'm so glad. Honestly, it's so inspirational to like see people just like, make art that they love, art that they're inspired by. And it clearly reflects in your work. You can see all your influences and like all your that it comes from a place from within, and that's what I absolutely love about your illustrations.
Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you. That's really nice.
Of course. But speaking about your artwork and your inspirations, can you share a bit more about your inspirations? Like what inspires you? Can you tell us like how you get inspiration and how you channel that into your artwork?
Yeah. So I think it's undeniable that there's a lot of anime influence in my work. I love anime. I've always loved Japan and just the atmosphere and the aesthetic. It's just something that I can't seem to shake, so I just embrace it. Um, so I've always been into that. When I was a kid, I was watching so much anime. I would run home from school and just watch all the series that were on TV at the time. And that isn't the case anymore. I don't watch much anime anymore, except like some movies that come out that have like a really nice quality to them. I love it when you put more energy and more time into the background paintings, like in Studio Ghibli movies, for example. So I've become very picky in that sense. But yeah, it's that attention to detail that really draws me in, that like hyper focus on something and like capturing a certain mood is what really draws me in. So that's my biggest inspiration too, I'd say. So when I start an illustration, it's not necessarily, oh, I want to paint an old building or something like that. I have a mood in mind that I want to capture. Something like I want to capture the feeling of a cloudy autumn day or something like that. And that's my starting point. And then all the elements that are in the scene kind of follow after that. So I'm doing everything to support the initial story or mood that I have in mind that I want to communicate. And I love storytelling. I love it when it feels like there's actually more to the image than you can see. Like, I want it to feel like a frame from an animated movie. I want you to think, oh, this is just 1 second in a larger piece that's not represented here, but could be somewhere out there. So that's kind of my process. Yeah.
Sorry, I was looking for the unmute button. Okay. So no, totally. I see that a lot in your work. Like you meant, you starting from the mood and the atmosphere and like the feeling. It's something that I kind of, how do I put this? I always, whenever I see your work, I instantly get what you're trying to convey, like the mood, the story, the feelings. I always feel it. So it makes so much sense that you always start from there and kind of like make sure everything follows that, because like it's the first thing I notice when I see any of your artwork. It's always the mood or the story. I remember vividly the cat, your OC in the rain under the leaves, and I love that artwork. Immediately, I just, like you said, it feels like a steal from an animation, and it's, or like a storybook or something. Just feels straight up like it's a character in their own world, right? Like it doesn't feel like some sort of, which is I remember in one of your one of your conferences you mentioned about like the a character should never, like, you try not to make the character look at the camera because it makes them feel more like they're like they're more in a world and not like just posy. And when you said that, it kind of like clicked to me, and every time, like, I always try to be more intentional. Like, it's like, why is this, should I make the person look at the camera? Is there a reason, or is it just like, what's the story behind this? So yeah, I've learned so much, and it's like, really, like I said, I'm trying not to like geek out too much, but yeah. Anyways, I absolutely think that's like, yeah, definitely, it's a beautiful. I see all those inspirations, like you said, the Japanese influences, the anime. I definitely see the Studio Ghibli with your environments. But I love how you were able to, like, get those inspirations and you kind of made it your own. Like, you kind of like turned it into your voice, because like I can tell the difference between a Studio Ghibli background and a Jamila background. I know the differences. I see the differences and I see the influences, but then it's very unique to you, and I love how you were able to turn that into your own voice. So like I said, been following your work for so long, and I have your first art book with 3D Total, but now you're dropping a second one, which is like, I am so excited for the new book. So excited. So let's just jump right into that. Like, can you tell us a bit about, let's start from the title. Can you tell us the title of the book and tell us a bit about, like, the meaning behind the title, why you chose that, and just tell us a bit about it. But actually, no. I also want you to talk a bit about, okay, no, it's fine. Tell us about, I'll come back to that. I'm sorry.
No worries. Yeah, so the second book is coming out. I'm really excited about that. And as a title, I chose Luminescence. And how that came about was we were playing with a couple of ideas, and I was talking to Simon, and he suggested some things. I think one of them was alchemy. And to me, that kind of felt very dark and heavy in just the sense of the connotation of the word. And I figured for me, it would make more sense to have something that feels more light and airy and maybe have some connotation of light as well, because the first book was called Komorebi, which means sunlight filtering through trees. And that was so perfect for the kind of work that I do, because I paint a lot with like light and shadow and dappled light and sunlight, and there's always this quality to my work that I wanted to capture with the title as well. So I was looking for something that had that feeling of like lightness to it. And yeah, I don't know, I kind of like the sound of it. So I guess it's like I start my illustrations with a mood. I kind of wanted to have the title evoke a certain mood as well. And that was the story behind it.
I definitely, that's a very fitting name. Like you said, it's kind of seems like, a continuation of your, like a part two, but like it still fits within your general vibes that I get from your work, because like you mentioned, you do use lights a lot, especially your more recent work. It's very atmospheric and moody, and there's a lot of like I mean, not your ink work, but like, the illustrations have a lot of like play of like light and like, these vibrant colors. So I definitely think Luminescence is a very fitting name. What I was gonna mention before was like, I mispronounced the name of your book. I made a video like sharing my art books, and that's kind of how I got this job. And like in that video, I constantly mispronounced Komorebi, right? Komorebi? I mispronounced it so much. I did not even realize until like months later that I've been absolutely mispronouncing the word, and I found that so funny. But yeah, I think Luminescence is I at least I'm definitely not going to mispronounce Luminescence.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, how would you know how to pronounce a Japanese word? It's
No, it was me. I should have just read it properly. I have no idea. It's fine. But definitely I think it's a very fitting name. I absolutely think it really ties your work together and like tells a bit more of like, it already like it's fitting for the kind of work that you do. You've told us a bit about the title. Can you tell us a bit about the cover, why you decided that? Like, just tell us a bit about the story behind the cover of the book.
Yeah, so I think painting the cover is always a bit of pressure, because it's literally what represents the work that's inside the book. So I've been racking my brain to come up with something that I liked. And I had done a couple of pieces that had some elements in them that I liked, that I wanted to repurpose, so to speak. So I painted an illustration that had like an upside down cityscape in it, and a couple of underwater paintings that are in the book and that are some of my favorites. So I figured, why not paint an underwater city and kind of merge these themes together. And that would also give me the opportunity to play with like some nice light that's coming through the surface of the water, some sun rays, and some kind of blue hues. I think my favorite colors are always like blue and green, so I wanted something that had that in them, because the last book was purple, which I also love, but this time I wanted something in my favorite color. And yeah, that was actually the thought process. I mean, the starting point was probably, again, finding something that had that light quality to it, because I had already decided on the title back then, and I wanted something to represent that in a visual form. So that's how the cover came about.
And I love when everything kind of ties together, like when the meaning and the illustration on the book, it just a lot of like thought has gone behind the production. And like, I think that's what makes art books so precious to me. And like, I just love seeing how much effort and how much thought has gone behind creating an art book, from the very little details, like from the title and the cover. That's why I always love asking questions like that, because it's always nice to like know what's going on inside the mind of the artist. I find that very interesting to me, So thanks for sharing that. That's lovely. So your first book, right? You shared a bit about your artistic journey, your process. There's a lot of tutorials in there. What can we expect from this book? Like, what's new, what's different, what's similar? Just tell us a bit about what we can expect from this second book?
Yeah. So the first book was kind of, I guess, my origin story, if you want to call it that. My very early influences, how I got into art, a couple of childhood drawings in there, and just, as you said, tutorials and very general information about how I approach making artwork and my inspiration behind it. But this time around, I wanted to focus much more on the creative process, like how I actually go about making images from the very first idea to the final product, and just focusing on that ideation process and that storytelling that I love to incorporate, and also make it a little bit of a workbook to give people questions that they could answer. So in each chapter, I answer questions for myself, like starting with why do I make art and what inspires me and all that. And then I take those same questions that I've just answered and reflect them back to the reader. At the end, you always get a little summary of those, yeah, questions that people can answer for themselves. And I think that would really help someone who's looking to find their own voice and the kind of art that they want to make, or they are discouraged in the current climate, from making art in the first place, because there are a lot of challenges out there right now. And I still think it's like so important to make art and to show examples of it that can only be done by a human being, these kinds of things. So it was really important for me to share that and to cover everything I've learned in these years that couldn't make it into the first book because it was a bit more general. But this one is like all about the creative process. Like I cover storytelling techniques, I cover ideation techniques, how to evoke emotions, yeah, all those kinds of things. So I'm really excited that I finally get to like bundle that up into a book. I've shared some of it in my schoolism course already, but yeah, this one is a lot more all-encompassing, I'd say.
Definitely, that sounds so exciting, honestly speaking. Like, I already mentioned, I enjoyed your schoolism class. I thought that was so informative. I learned so much. So I can only imagine how much new knowledge is packed into this book. I'm sure it's going to be just as informative, if not more, So I'm so excited. I think, like you mentioned, yes, definitely times right now are very weird and strange, for especially for artists. It's like lots of things happening left and right, like Instagram's algorithm trying to make art some sort of like, I don't know. And it's like there's always something going on. So I do think like adding those questions to make people reflect, it's just like a very positive thing to do. And I think it's a really great idea to make people like not only think about like, not only focus on the art they're making, but ask themselves like why you're making the art, and reminding yourself why you make this, like why you're doing this in the first place, why you're here, why we all create, right? I think that's such a nice addition to the book, because it's beyond, it's beyond just like pretty artwork, but it's also like we create because of like what we feel. So I think that's such a very nice touch and nice addition to the book. So yeah, definitely, I love that. So I wanted to focus a bit more about like your workflow, because you've mentioned on Instagram multiple times about like your evolution of your art and how you're constantly trying to, So can you tell us a bit about like how, is there anything different? Is there anything new? Is there like, what have you like, when it comes to like your workflow that you're kind of like, can you just no spoilers, just tease it a bit, like tell us a bit, like if there's like, what is, your workflow? Tell us a bit about that, just a bit.
Yeah. My workflow is very different from a lot of other people's workflows, which I guess is normal, but I've always felt weird about it because I was watching videos by other artists and they were doing something like completely different from me. They would just like get out a piece of paper and start doodling and something would come along. And that's just not how my brain works. I will default to just like random faces or trees or whatever, and it won't amount to something. So I always start with writing when I do ideation for paintings. And like I said, I like to start out with a mood or any kind of word association that comes to me. I'll write that down and then I'll branch out from there. So it's like a little diagram that kind of develops. So the example I said before of that moody, rainy autumn day, for example, um, then I would think, okay, what do I want? What kind of colors come to mind when I think of that? What location could I think of specifically? Like autumn in Germany looks very different from autumn in Japan, for example. So that kind of branches out into new ideas. Um, so I always have to have a solid word, um, I guess scaffolding to begin with, so that I have visuals that will fill in those blanks for me. So writing is always the first step for me, and I go into that in the book as well. And then I love doing research before I actually get into drawing, and that's something that has always left me feeling very insecure because everyone was always saying, no, don't use reference yet. You have to draw it from your head. But then I don't have all the information that I need, and I don't have these little bits and pieces that I discover while I look at images, and they will spark new ideas that I can write down and add to what I already have. So I love doing research. I love saving images. It's one of my weird passions. I have like a huge collection of things that I've found somewhere. I love Pinterest, all that kind of stuff. So that's always what comes next for me. And when I have discovered and found everything that I think I need, then I make a gigantic mood board, and then I'm ready to start drawing, to make those sketches and to develop them further. And I always like to separate things into manageable chunks. So I would do the writing first, then I'll do the research, and I'll do a rough sketch or a couple of rough sketches and pick my favorite, and then do a very clean line work or line art path, and then I will go into color, and then I will go into lighting. So very often I'll just like fill in some base colors and then put like a layer on top of it that distinguishes between light and shadow, and then I'll develop that further because otherwise I just get overwhelmed. I need to take everything step by step and make sure that I give everything the attention it deserves. It's a very long process. Like sometimes my paintings take like 50 hours or something, but I love really getting into it. I love taking all those steps and not rushing anything. So yeah, I'd always rather have like one really nice painting that I'm proud of per month than like 30 speed paintings, and I'm like, eh. So that's kind of how I approach it. Yeah.
I absolutely love that because, like you mentioned, right, especially with the type of illustrations you make, like that very story driven and they really have a strong sense of mood, and they're very polished and like, very, you can tell that like a lot of effort went into this. And I think that's amazing because especially right now, you don't really get to see, everyone's trying to be fast, right? Everyone's trying to make content, right, with your art. And you don't get to see like a lot of artwork that really has a lot of like a time and like care put into it. So I love the fact that you take so much time like to think about the idea, think about the mood, really like let that sink and then do the research. I love, like you said, I love the idea of like collecting research and like getting pictures and really getting absorbed into the idea before starting. I think that, especially like I said with more, it's not like this is a quick sketch, just an illustration. There's a goal, you want to make a beautiful like piece of art that can resonate with the viewer. It's not something you just like, I mean, some people can do it, but then it's like everyone's process is different, and it's like, it's really, you really get into the mindset, you really get the emotion that you want, and then you're able to like, when you take your time, you put in all that effort into it. It shows, and it shows in your works that you really put in so much effort into it. And I think that's really, especially right now, really important that people take time to like really put in effort into their work. And like you mentioned, I do agree. One solid illustration a month that you're proud of is better than like 100 like artworks. They're like, I 100% agree with that, because it feels more rewarding. You put in a lot of effort, and if you think about it, the old masters, that's kind of how they lived. They like did like one grand painting like 5 years, you know, and they're like, they didn't have nothing, no Instagram algorithm to make them feel like, they have to pump up like a full on like masterpiece every 2 days. I don't know. But definitely, I think that's I think, and there are probably a lot of people who also resonate with you on that workflow, that feel like, oh, they just need to like really take their time to like go step by step and really put in a lot of effort. So I think a lot of people who have a similar workflow will be able to like resonate with that, and people who don't maybe might learn something from it. So I think that's really cool.
When I was talking to students very often, or like aspiring artists, I've noticed that very, very often they just need permission given by a professional to do what they are naturally wanting to do or what they're good at, and not feeling like they need to bend over backwards to do something completely different that doesn't really suit them. So for me, whenever I talk to someone, half of the time it's just really giving them permission, saying like, listen, you can do this, it's fine, you can use reference, you can take your time, you can do whatever you like, there are no rules here, go for it. So that's also what I want to do with the book a little bit. So just showing like, hey, listen, this is how I do it, but figure it out for yourself what your process is. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's perfect, because like at the end of the day, we're creating art because we want to. It's from our heart. So I think it's very important not to get like overly blindsided by like, this is how my hero does it. It has to be exactly like that, unless that's not right. I think it's very important to remember that no, there's no right or wrong. Like, do it your way, and if it's more rewarding, and when you do it your way, when you get what you want, and then you kind of make it yours. So definitely, I think that's beautiful. Yeah, I agree. So we're coming to the end of the interview. I've asked most of the questions. What was your favorite part of working on this book? What was your favorite chapter? What are you so excited for, that like, I just cannot wait like for people to see this? Or it was what I had the most, like, I feel so rewarding working on that, like.
Yeah, so I loved working on the whole book. It was great. I actually, even though the deadline for handing everything in was in November or September, I started writing the chapters in February, and I handed them in like a month later because I was so excited about just writing it. At the time, I was in a bit of a creative slump with painting, but I was really eager to write something. So one thing I've been doing more these past few years is like reading. I read a lot of books every year, novels and essay collections and all of that. So I actually have the goal of writing something myself next year. So we'll see how that goes. But that was really good practice now, just kind of getting everything together, all those little notes that I've been taking for years. Like every time I have thoughts about art, I journal about it, and I try to problem solve all the things that are a little bit difficult for me to figure out at the time. I will write about them, and then when I have an epiphany, I'll add that. So I was going through all these notes that I had, and they turned into the text for the book, and that was a really fun process. I loved that. So I think my favorite chapter that I wrote was the one on visual storytelling. I think that's a really fun one. I have like these, like I talked about earlier a little bit, these techniques of like how to come up with an idea, that step by step adding little things to the initial idea or impression that I want to capture. So I hope these will be helpful for people. My experience has been that they've been really helpful in this class that I'm teaching. So every time I get responses back, I'm like, oh, I have so many ideas now. Thank you so much. So I hope this is gonna be a fun chapter for people to read. And it was certainly a fun chapter for me to write. And the whole book was fun to write as well.
I'm sure it's gonna be amazing. Like I said, amazing teacher. I've watched her schoolism class, very informative. So I'm certain it's gonna be very helpful and informative already. Okay, so can you tell us a bit about like what we can expect from the campaign, like the add-ons? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so we have a couple of things that are gonna be available. I'm gonna provide 5 original gouache paintings that I made. So yeah, I've been switching over to traditional media recently, and it's been a lot of fun. And I have a couple of paintings that I want to sell with the campaign, so that's gonna be exciting. We're also making a little companion book with the art book that includes ink sketches that I made. So if it's gonna turn out how I imagine it, it's gonna be like this cloth bound little book with like gold foiling on the top that has these ink sketches in it. So I'm really, really excited about that. There's gonna be a giclée print of one of the gouache paintings I did recently. Those are the big ones, I think. Yeah, and then there's also gonna be the little stretch goals that are gonna be exciting too. So
The stretch goals are surprise. That one's not for today. It's for a surprise. So go back the book so that we can get on. Okay, so that was such a very interesting interview. I loved hearing about your thought process. I loved hearing about the book. I'm so excited for the book. Oh, I love it. Your first book, like I said, I backed it. I got all the goodies. It was beautiful, so stunning, and I'm so excited for this one. But before we leave, I'd like to ask, do you have any general advice for beginner artists or artists who maybe are just like starting off their career, intermediate, anyone, just any general advice that you have for artists? Can you please share?
yeah, I know that it's tough right now, but I think the most important thing is always to remember why you started this. Most of us, or I think all of us, have been drawing when we were kids just because we enjoyed it and it was fun to express ourselves. So in everything, like if you want to do this as a job or if you're in any way wanting to improve and get better and all of that, it's really important not to pressure yourself too much and not lose the fun in it. Try to focus on the things that you find enjoyable and don't treat it as a chore or don't let it become a chore, because I've had that experience in the past. Like I've dealt with burnout sometimes, and yeah, it's always so difficult when something that you love becomes something that is burdensome to you and that's troubling you. So try to enjoy it, be there for the ride. Don't focus on becoming the best artist in the world or becoming better than this person or that person or having a certain amount of followers or getting a certain amount of money from it. It's just like make the art that you want to make, that gets you excited, that makes you feel something. Don't chase trends, you know. What I always say to people is try to be your own favorite artist. So kind of just draw the things that you love, draw the kind of themes that you love, use the colors that you love, use the medium that you love. Just try to enjoy it. That's my biggest advice, I guess.
Biggest and most important. I think everyone has to remember that. So yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed this interview and I am so looking forward to the book. I cannot stress that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was fun. Thank you.